Canada Limited. The year was 1946. Canada was beginning to move away from a war economy that had lasted for 6 long years. The population of Alberta was hovering at about 900,000, and as now, the two major business centers, Edmonton and Calgary, were competing for first place, each with about 100,000 citizens. Alberta's Turner Valley, the country's most productive oil field, was now on the decline after years of steady, if not spectacular, production. This raised questions in the minds of the major oil companies about Western Canada's potential as anything more than a natural gas producer. Just 2 short years later, however, these worries would be put to rest in spectacular fashion, as the attention of the entire world focused on a quarter section in the new Leduc field, at a well-known as Atlantic No. 3. Alberta's powerful energy industry came of age in a pillar of fire.
Is there a well there producing 15,000 barrels of oil a day?
Yes.
Or is the stock of the company publicly trading?
Yes.
Well, what's it trading at?
25
25 cents or $25?
cents.
Buy as much as you can.
Last night, the wild oil well in the Leduc field, 20 miles south of Edmonton, caught fire.
Atlantic No. 3 really put Alberta on the map as an oil-producing province.
I've seen several blowouts, but nothing as bad as that one was.
The story of the blowout at Atlantic No. 3 begins with the vast promise of the Leduc field near Edmonton, Alberta, and a renegade entrepreneur who saw the potential for untold wealth. His name was Frank McMahon.
The millions of people who saw the opening and closing ceremonies of the '88 Winter Olympic Games, which originated from this venue, probably had no idea as to the colorful background of the man whose name still graces this venerable stadium. The wealth he was to amass during his lifetime was due largely to the catastrophe that took place at Atlantic No. 3. A native of Moyi, British Columbia, Frank McMahon began his career drilling in the Fraser Delta. After several unsuccessful ventures in BC, Frank set his sights on the riches of Alberta's Turner Valley field. If there was one thing Frank had learned by this time, it was the importance of using other people's money. Hence, the public company West Turner Oils was created and listed on the Vancouver Exchange. But soon after, he was asked to resign from West Turner because of his extravagant spending practices. In 1939, West Turner became Pacific Petroleum's and enjoyed moderate success. In his period of exile from Pacific, McMahon indulged in many new ventures. One of them was the Atlantic Oil Company. Frank McMahon's business dealings had always been questionable, and the way he secured the lease that eventually yielded No. 3 was no exception. First, we must understand the important location of the parcel of land. It was February 13, 1947, when Imperial discovered oil at its Leduc No. 1 well. The oil patch knew it was onto something big and thus began an unprecedented drilling boom. The land around Leduc No. 1 was hot property.
They were mostly immigrant landowners, Ukrainian descent and German descent, and some English people. They were good farmers and very proud people, good dealers, and those that had the mineral rights were most anxious to see the development.
This is the land Frank McMahon set his sights on in 1947 as it looks today, seemingly untouched by the great oil well fire of '48. It belonged to the Rebus family, who gained title when Bronislaw Rebus homesteaded there on his arrival from Poland. His death in 1940, however, created a title dispute in the family, and McMahon used this to make his play. Imperial Oil had already signed a lease agreement for the land on October 22, 1946, for the princely sum of $5 and a 12.5% royalty, or about 3 cents an acre. Someone, somewhere, tipped off Frank McMahon about the conflicting Rebus claims and the clouded imperial lease. Enter Norman Bus Lacey, Frank's confidant and chauffeur. Well known and well liked, it's said he could charm the birds out of the trees. On July 2nd, 1947, Bus Lacey signed an option with John Rebus, the son with the strongest claim on the land. $150 an acre. To keep him away from the competition and other family members, Bus Lacey took John Rebus to the Calgary